In this video, we're going to demonstrate how to replace the Human Touch Super Novo slide actuator. If for some reason your chair is not in a fully upright position, use the back buttons on the remote control to incline it to the upright position. This is important because you won't be able to remove the screws on the rear shroud otherwise. First thing we're going to do is power off the chair, then unplug it. And next, if you have batteries installed in the battery backup compartment, disconnect those batteries from the terminals to avoid the chair making any movements without the power cord attached. As you can see, we don't have batteries in there, so we're good to go. To remove the rear shroud, we need a Phillips head screwdriver, and we can use that to remove the 4 screws that secure it. And next, we're actually not going to fully remove the shroud, but we're going to pull it back out of the way to expose the PCB box and then turn it to its side. It'll still be connected to the chair. We're just trying to get it out of the way, like so. In order to loosen the screws that secure the PCB housing, we need to remove the backrest cover to gain access to the rear screws. Use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the 6 screws that secure the backrest cover. Okay, now we can use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the screw at each of the 4 corners of the PCB housing. Next, we need to tip the chair onto its left-hand side. Before we do that, we're just going to place that rear shroud back into position, just so it doesn't get broken in the process. And we're ready to tip the chair gently onto its left-hand side. Once the chair is on its left-hand side, we actually need to pull that rear shroud off once again. like so. Now we're ready to remove the bolt that secures the rear of the actuator. In order to access this bolt, we need to push inward on the bottom of that PCB housing. That's why we had to go through all those steps, so that we would be able to move it out of the way. Then we can easily, we're going to need a vice grip or a pliers to secure the nut that's at the top of the bolt, and then we'll use a 6mm Allen wrench to remove the bolt from the bottom. And then we can do the same thing to remove the bolt from the front of the actuator. Before we remove the actuator from the chair, place your fingers underneath the mounting points at each end. Each end of the actuator has an insert that is loose and will fall out when you pull the actuator out, and you don't want to lose those inserts into the chair somewhere. It will cause trouble down the line. So as you slide the actuator out, use your fingers to retain those two inserts. Now we need to gain access to the actuator connectors to disconnect them. So the first step is to pop off the inside cover of the connector junction box up there. It just pops off. And then pull the cables down so that you can see them. And then disconnect the yellow and white connector. Then you can remove the actuator from the chair. The spare part actuator comes in the fully retracted position. So if your chair was not in a fully retracted position when you started this procedure, we need to manually move the chair frame into that position. And our chair was in the correct position, but we set this up just to show you. You can easily move the chair until the frame is as far forward as it will go. And then the brackets will be in the correct position for mounting the actuator. The new actuator comes with new inserts already installed in it and secured with a twisted wire. We have already removed the wires here, but just untwist the wire, and then while holding those inserts in position, you can mount the actuator into the two mounting brackets. And if you don't hold the inserts, that's what happens. Once the actuator is installed in both mounting points with the inserts in place, we're ready to replace the bolts and nuts. The bolts, again, are inserted from the bottom with the nuts on top on both ends. Now we're ready to reconnect the connectors. Next, we're going to arrange the connectors inside the connector junction box with the cables coming out the top and the bottom using the slots. It's important that all the cables are in slots so they don't get pinched when we put the cover back on. And once that is the case, we can pop that cover back on. And then kind of wobble each cable to make sure that it's not pinched. Then we're going to install a zip tie just to keep the rest of the cabling secured and out of the way so it doesn't get caught on anything when the chair is moving. So just kind of gather that excess cable up into a bundle and secure it with the zip tie. Cut the excess zip tie. Okay, to get ready to tip the chair back to an upright position, we need to slide that rear shroud back into place just to protect it while the chair is being tipped. And then we can gently return the chair to the upright position. Then once again we can remove the shroud and tip it to the side to give us access to the PCB housing area. Next we need to adjust the PCB housing so that the 4 corner screw holes are aligned, and then we can replace the 4 screws to secure it. Next, we're going to reinstall the backrest cover. Before we do that, note the 2 tabs on the bottom of the backrest cover and the corresponding slots on the chair. So we need to insert those tabs into those slots. And then raise the backrest up, and you'll see there are white balls and sockets here that need to snap into place to secure the top of the backrest cover. Okay, and now we're ready to slide that rear shroud into position one final time, with the sides being inserted just inside the plastic side frame like so. And you'll know you're in the right place when the screw holes on top are aligned. Before we reinstall those screws though, feel underneath the back of the frame to make sure that there's no cabling that's stuck between the shroud and the frame. Then we're ready to replace the 4 screws. Okay, and once the screws are installed, push up and down on the shroud a little bit to make sure that it bounces a little bit like that. It's important that it's able to bounce up and down. That's how the safety sensor works. If the shroud doesn't bounce up and down like that, there's likely a cable stuck between the shroud and the metal frame in the back, preventing it from doing so, or perhaps the screws are not threaded properly in their holes. So simply remove it and complete that installation process again. And we're ready to plug in the chair and power it back on. And if you remove batteries from the battery backup compartment, be sure to reconnect those. Next, we're going to use the remote control and press the recline button to test the slide actuator. But before the chair reclines, it moves forward. So as we can see, the slide actuator is now working. And we're done.